In front of the entire world, Ibrahim Traoré just slapped Xi Jinping in the face without raising his voice. At a global summit meant to glorify China's economic power, Burkina Faso's young president openly humiliated the Chinese leader, exposing Beijing's hidden agenda to enslave Africa through debt. Ibrahim didn't use insults. He used facts, clear and brutal, and in that stunned silence, everyone realized diplomacy would never be the same again. The massive conference hall was suffocated by silence. Heads of state from America, China, Germany, France, and India sat frozen. Screens flashed bold numbers, exposing Africa's crippling debt to China. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. At the front, Ibrahim Traoré stood quietly. His eyes didn't search for approval. Instead, they stared straight ahead, calm, precise, fearless. He had delivered no threats, no accusations, just facts, bare and merciless. In that tense silence, delegates felt the bitter truth hang heavy in the air. A young leader from one of the poorest countries had just turned diplomacy upside down, and everyone knew the game had changed. That silence didn't end quickly. It lingered, uncomfortable and thick, forcing even the most powerful leaders to shift uneasily in their seats. The delegates exchanged furtive glances, each look asking the same unspoken question: how had this young African president, from a nation most barely noticed, dared to challenge China's might so openly? No leader spoke it aloud, but the thought echoed unmistakably around the table. They had expected cautious diplomacy, careful words, quiet acceptance. Instead, Ibrahim had done something far bolder. He had told the truth plainly, without fear of consequence. As they watched him stand calm and composed, the unspoken question shifted subtly in the minds of everyone present. It wasn't just why Ibrahim had acted, but something deeper, more unsettling. Could one truthful voice really shake the foundations of global diplomacy? And if Ibrahim had spoken, how long could the rest of them remain silent just a few hours earlier? The atmosphere at the Global Infrastructure Summit had been entirely different. Delegates arrived under heavy security, polite smiles masking cautious calculations. The great powers, China, America, Germany, India, France, moved confidently, exchanging handshakes and casual pleasantries. They expected no surprises. After all, these summits were typically routine, carefully choreographed displays of unity, designed to project stability in a quiet corner. Ibrahim Traoré sat calmly, unnoticed by most. Unlike the other leaders, he arrived without a grand entourage, accompanied only by a few trusted aides. His demeanor was reserved yet thoughtful, quietly observant. Those who did notice him underestimated him, dismissing his presence as mere protocol, another symbolic voice without real influence. But Ibrahim wasn't here for symbolism. Weeks before, he had reviewed the fine print of the aid proposals. Behind closed doors, he had spent countless sleepless nights studying hidden conditions, understanding precisely what the powerful players intended. He knew exactly what he was about to refuse and the storm it would unleash. As the summit began, Ibrahim watched delegates nod politely, accept pamphlets, and listen attentively. He saw clearly how easy it would be to simply blend into the crowd, to accept quietly, to surrender subtly. But he had made his choice. No one yet knew it. But the calm everyone took for granted was already fracturing, preparing to give way to an unprecedented storm, one Ibrahim himself would soon unleash. As the summit officially opened, China quickly seized the spotlight. Chairman Xi Jinping took center stage, his voice steady, measured, authoritative. Delegates listened closely as he presented a sweeping vision and ambitious, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure aid package designed explicitly for developing nations. On the surface, it was everything they wanted to hear: funding for roads, ports, digital infrastructure, a chance for progress, for modernization, seemingly without cost. But beneath the polished words lay conditions that were carefully phrased, yet unmistakably clear. Nations accepting this aid would commit themselves to Chinese technological standards, embracing Chinese-built networks, data centers, and surveillance systems. They would participate exclusively in digital payment agreements using China's digital yuan, data sovereignty, once jealously guarded by individual states, would quietly shift toward Beijing's oversight. Xi's presentation ended to polite applause. Delegates scribbled notes, exchanged quick whispers. For many, the lure of rapid development overshadowed the hidden compromises, but Ibrahim Traoré listened differently. He saw clearly what lay beneath the offer, a promise of prosperity wrapped tightly around strings of control. And soon, the entire summit would see exactly how much Ibrahim was willing to sacrifice to maintain his nation's freedom. In the moments following Xi's announcement, an uneasy silence settled over the hall. Delegates glanced carefully at each other, each waiting to see who would react first. Beneath composed faces lay subtle calculations, leaders from smaller nations considering their options, silently weighing the potential gains against the hidden costs. The representatives from Western powers leaned back slightly, masks of neutrality firmly in place, betraying no immediate response. They knew better than to openly challenge Beijing at this stage. Instead, they watched, waited, and silently evaluated. Amid the cautious quiet, Ibrahim Traoré remained motionless. His expression revealed nothing, but behind his steady eyes, a fire burned. He saw clearly the crossroads at which they now stood, a seemingly easy path paved with short-term gains, or a far tougher road that preserved independence and dignity. No one had spoken yet, but the quiet tension was unmistakable, pressing down heavily, waiting for anyone to break the silence. Finally, the silence broke not with words, but with quiet, decisive action. Ibrahim Traoré calmly leaned forward, picked up his pen, and wrote a single, unwavering line on the confidential summit record. Burkina Faso does not accept attached conditions. There was no explanation, no hesitation, no drama, just clear, absolute rejection in simple, firm handwriting. Delegates around him shifted nervously. Some raised eyebrows subtly, others quickly jotted notes, pretending they hadn't noticed. The message was unmistakable, and it instantly shifted the energy in the room. Ibrahim's refusal spoke louder than any speech could have. It challenged every delegate present, forcing them to silently question their own willingness to compromise, their own price for prosperity, in that moment. Ibrahim knew exactly what he had done. He had drawn a line, a clear boundary beyond which Burkina Faso would never step, and challenged every other leader to decide where they stood, just hours after Ibrahim's quiet refusal. A set of confidential documents suddenly appeared online. No one knew their exact source, but their authenticity was unmistakable. Within minutes, the summit buzzed with whispered conversations, shocked expressions, and subtle glances toward the Chinese delegation. The leaked documents exposed what many had suspected, but few dared to confirm openly. China's previous infrastructure aid packages across Africa were not simple acts of generosity. Instead, hidden deep within the fine print lay stringent conditions, agreements granting China preferential access to strategic resources, critical minerals, and valuable digital data. More troublingly, some documents indicated subtle clauses influencing votes in the United Nations, quietly undermining sovereignty and independence. The revelations sent shockwaves through the summit. Leaders who had previously signed similar agreements now felt trapped, realizing too late the depth of their commitments. Delegates from Djibouti, Zambia, and Ethiopia avoided eye contact, their discomfort palpable amid the tension. Attention shifted back to Ibrahim Traoré, whose quiet refusal earlier had seemed impulsive to some. But now, the world understood the truth clearly. He had seen what many overlooked. His seemingly small gesture wasn't stubbornness, it was clarity. Ibrahim had rejected not just the aid, but the hidden web of influence beneath it. As the hall filled with uneasy murmurs, delegates silently acknowledged that Ibrahim's quiet, uncompromising stand had revealed the uncomfortable truth they'd ignored for too long. The leaked documents hadn't surprised Ibrahim. Weeks earlier, a senior diplomat from Ghana had discreetly approached him. The diplomat was older, seasoned by decades of navigating political storms. His message was clear but cautious. Be careful. Mr. President, nothing China offers comes without conditions, conditions that become chains very quickly. At first, Ibrahim had simply listened, absorbing every detail, every subtle warning. Later, he quietly ordered his closest advisors to analyze past Chinese aid agreements. He had spent countless nights reviewing their findings. discovering disturbing patterns of hidden control woven skillfully into benevolent language, now sitting at the summit amidst the growing tension. Ibrahim felt deep gratitude toward the diplomat who had risked much to warn him. Without that quiet intervention, he might have overlooked the subtle yet powerful trap laid out before his country. This silent solidarity between African leaders gave Ibrahim a renewed strength. It reminded him he wasn't standing alone. His decision wasn't just a refusal, it was a deliberate act of courage meant to inspire others. And now, with the truth exposed for all to see, the seeds of genuine change had begun to sprout. As murmurs filled the summit hall, Ibrahim Traoré remained composed. Some delegates still viewed his stance as impulsive, an emotional reaction to China's conditions. But the truth ran far deeper. Ibrahim had carefully considered every consequence. He knew that refusing such an influential nation openly would carry heavy costs, economic retaliation, diplomatic isolation, maybe worse. Yet Ibrahim also knew that genuine freedom never came cheaply. He had seen firsthand the devastating effects of compromised sovereignty in neighboring nations, where infrastructure built with foreign loans became leverage for political influence. He had watched as autonomy slowly vanished, replaced by quiet submission. Every detail, every outcome had been meticulously weighed. His advisors had warned him, cautioning restraint, urging diplomacy. But Ibrahim understood clearly that neutrality in moments like these meant surrendering silently. His decision wasn't reckless bravado. It was strategic bravery and intentional risk chosen consciously, a deliberate sacrifice made to preserve his nation's dignity and independence. As delegates around him grappled with uncertainty, Ibrahim stood firm, quietly reaffirming to himself that no price was too high for freedom. His courage wasn't blind, it was calculated, precise, and deeply necessary. The summit continued, tension simmering just beneath the surface. Everyone waited cautiously, sensing an inevitable confrontation. It wasn't long before Chairman Xi Jinping stood again, his calm demeanor barely concealing quiet irritation. This time, his words carried a sharper edge, though he never directly named Ibrahim Traoré. In a steady, deliberate tone, Xi spoke of young leaders who confuse pride with strength, leaders who had recently emerged from jungles, unaware of the complexities of global diplomacy. The implication was unmistakable, the insult subtle, yet painfully clear. Delegates felt the air thicken, eyes shifting discreetly toward Ibrahim. Xi's carefully chosen words cut deep, challenging Ibrahim's credibility, his experience, even his right to speak at the global table. The message was clear: Ibrahim's defiance would not be tolerated quietly. Yet Ibrahim showed no outward reaction. He merely watched Xi, unblinking, unmoved by the attempt to publicly diminish him. He had anticipated this response, had known that refusing China would provoke retaliation, but Ibrahim also knew something Xi didn't, that the truth he was about to reveal would shake the summit more profoundly than any veiled insult ever could. Ibrahim let Xi's words fade slowly into the silence, absorbing the unspoken challenge. Delegates around the table shifted nervously, waiting for Ibrahim's reaction, expecting anger or defiance. But none came. Instead, Ibrahim remained perfectly calm, his expression composed and unreadable. He rose slowly, deliberately, without speaking a single word. A subtle gesture toward his aide brought a projector to life, illuminating the large screen behind him, every eye fixed on Ibrahim, drawn by anticipation and uncertainty. No one yet knew what he would show them, but instinctively, they felt it would change everything. With a simple click, the screen filled with stark, undeniable facts. Numbers, cold and precise, spoke louder than any heated words could. Delegates stared silently, confronted by uncomfortable truths they could no longer ignore. The first slide detailed Africa's growing debt burden to China in sharp percentages: Djibouti at 73%, Angola at 45%, Zambia at 39%, Ethiopia at 31%, Kenya at 28%, Mozambique at 25%, Ghana at 23%. Each figure was a quiet accusation, evidence of a subtle but profound loss of sovereignty. The silence deepened further, without pause. Ibrahim calmly advanced to the next slide. A large, detailed map appeared, pinpointing strategic African ports, railways, mines, and data centers. Each location marked clearly in bold red, the color symbolizing areas under significant Chinese financial influence and indirect control. Delegates shifted uneasily, eyes darting briefly toward the Chinese delegation, then quickly back to the screen. Ibrahim offered no commentary. He didn't need to. The truth spoke powerfully enough on its own, forcing each delegate to confront realities they'd previously avoided in that tense silence. Ibrahim stood firm, his presence quietly commanding the room. His message, delivered through simple, irrefutable data, resonated deeply. It was a silent demand for accountability, a clear warning of the consequences of unchecked compromise. Now, no one in the hall could deny Ibrahim's courage or the urgency of the truth he'd revealed, as the data lingered starkly on the screen. Ibrahim turned slowly toward Xi Jinping. His gaze was steady, his voice clear and composed. "I haven't refused money," Ibrahim stated simply, his words measured and firm. "I've refused the hidden cost, the invisible chains that come with it." He paused briefly, letting the full weight of his words settle across the room. "Your definition of partnership is trading sovereignty for infrastructure." Ibrahim continued calmly. "I cannot accept development at the price of freedom." Every delegate remained motionless, breath held, awaiting the next words. "Chairman Xi suggested I've only recently emerged from the jungle," Ibrahim said quietly, with a hint of steel in his tone. "Maybe that's true, but leaving the jungle doesn't mean stepping willingly into a golden cage." He took a final, deliberate glance around the room, his voice lowering slightly. "If I'm a child at the grown-ups' table," Ibrahim concluded, "then you've just allowed a child to expose truths you've carefully hidden." His words resonated clearly, cutting deep, leaving delegates stunned by the unyielding power of honesty. Ibrahim had delivered his verdict quietly, coldly, and undeniably. Ibrahim's words hung heavily in the room, reverberating like echoes through silent corridors. Around the table, world leaders reacted subtly but unmistakably. The president of France leaned forward slowly, his brow furrowing deeply. Without speaking, he quickly scribbled notes, perhaps reassessing France's own delicate balance with Chinese interests in Africa. America's Secretary of State narrowed his eyes thoughtfully, closely studying the screen still displaying Ibrahim's stark data. His posture was carefully neutral, but the flicker of recognition in his gaze was undeniable. Ibrahim's message had landed, forcing a reevaluation of quiet, diplomatic complacency. Across the table, the German chancellor exchanged a fleeting, uneasy glance with India's prime minister. They communicated silently, both realizing that Ibrahim's truth had shaken the assumptions underpinning their cautious neutrality. Chairman Xi remained utterly still, fingers tapping lightly against the polished table surface, eyes fixed coldly ahead. His expression betrayed nothing, yet the tightening muscles in his jaw spoke volumes. In that prolonged moment, Ibrahim's quiet stand had disrupted the entire summit, forcing global leaders to confront uncomfortable truths they'd long avoided. He hadn't simply challenged China, he had challenged them all. As the session continued, something subtle yet significant happened, without discussion, without any explicit acknowledgement. The phrase Chinese aid package vanished entirely from conversations around the summit table. Delegates cautiously steered clear of the topic, quietly removing it from their official statements and summaries. No one openly explained this silent omission, but everyone understood its significance. Ibrahim's uncompromising stand had made the hidden conditions impossible to ignore. Quietly, collectively, delegates decided it was safer to leave the proposal behind than face further uncomfortable revelations. A silent consensus had been reached, and Ibrahim's quiet courage had reshaped the agenda entirely. The consequences of Ibrahim's bold stance came swiftly and harshly. Within hours of the summit's close, Beijing quietly announced the suspension of all ongoing aid projects in Burkina Faso. Crucial infrastructure halted immediately half-built highways, nearly completed water treatment plants, projects that Ibrahim's country desperately needed. International media seized upon the decision, branding Ibrahim reckless, impulsive, a young leader who'd endangered his nation's future by refusing a powerful ally. Headlines condemned him, questioning his judgment and ability to lead responsibly. But Ibrahim anticipated this backlash. He understood clearly that courage had consequences. and freedom often came at a price. Despite the mounting pressure and criticism, he remained composed, knowing precisely why he had acted and what it would cost. Ibrahim's quiet strength was undiminished. He had chosen dignity over dependence, sovereignty over short-term comfort. And now, Burkina Faso faced a difficult road, but one leading toward genuine independence, just as the world began to write off Burkina Faso, dismissing Ibrahim's actions as naive and damaging. A surprising announcement shook global headlines, quietly, yet decisively. Burkina Faso unveiled the creation of an unprecedented coalition, the African Digital Sovereignty Alliance. 7 African nations stood shoulder to shoulder, pledging cooperation in infrastructure, technology, and economic development without foreign political conditions. This bold alliance was a direct response to the hidden strings of previous aid packages, a clear rebuke to the concept of development at the cost of sovereignty. At the heart of this coalition stood Ibrahim Traoré, calmly reaffirming his country's resolve. The message was clear: Africa could unite, independently forging its future, refusing to trade autonomy for short-term gain. Global media scrambled, reversing their earlier narrative. Ibrahim, previously labeled reckless, was now being described as visionary, a young leader who had risked everything to protect independence, inspiring others to follow across the continent. Hope ignited. Ibrahim's quiet courage had not only saved his country from hidden traps, it had sparked a movement, proving that unity and dignity could triumph over coercion and compromise. In a matter of days, Ibrahim had transformed from isolated leader to symbol of continental resilience. The new alliance, born from defiance, signaled the beginning of genuine change, one crafted by African hands, defined by African voices, and guided firmly by African interests. The emergence of the African Digital Sovereignty Alliance captured global attention, prompting immediate questions. Who stood behind this unprecedented initiative? How had Ibrahim built such a powerful coalition in secrecy? Answers soon became clear. Kenya, known for its vibrant technology sector, quickly stepped forward, committing to share cutting-edge digital innovations. Nairobi's leading tech entrepreneurs proudly pledged their expertise, envisioning an Africa empowered by its own technological solutions. South Africa quietly but decisively offered robust financial support, signaling a major continental player standing firmly with Ibrahim's vision. Johannesburg's financial hubs openly backed the alliance, strengthening its credibility and stability. Nigeria soon followed, offering its pioneering experience in digital currency. Nigerian fintech leaders joined eagerly, designing secure, independent digital payment systems specifically tailored for Africa, freeing member countries from external financial control. Even beyond Africa, support quietly emerged. India discreetly provided crucial technical infrastructure satellite systems, cloud services ensuring the alliance had robust, reliable foundations independent of powerful outside nations, and from across oceans. A new wave of solidarity arose. Wealthy and influential members of the African diaspora in America, France, and Brazil collectively established a dedicated investment fund, pouring over $3 billion into the alliance without any political conditions or strings attached. Within days, Ibrahim's coalition had transformed from a symbolic act of defiance into a formidable international partnership, carefully crafted, strategic, and deeply rooted in shared goals of independence and prosperity. Quietly, thoughtfully, Ibrahim had built something unprecedented, a coalition of genuine cooperation, untainted by hidden interests or conditional agreements. His quiet courage had given birth not just to a vision, but a new reality. Almost overnight, Ibrahim's perceived isolation transformed into something entirely different across the continent. Newspapers shifted their headlines dramatically, from criticizing Ibrahim as reckless to praising him as a visionary leader. His brave stand had inspired countries throughout Africa to reconsider their own dealings with foreign powers. Leaders from Ghana, Senegal, and Namibia publicly called for comprehensive reviews of their existing agreements with China. Influential voices in Zambia and Kenya echoed Ibrahim's warnings about the hidden risks of unchecked dependency. Quietly at first, then openly, nations began renegotiating, carefully reclaiming autonomy once surrendered under the guise of development. International analysts and commentators, once dismissive, now recognized Ibrahim's pivotal role. Global media outlets dubbed him Africa's new symbol of independence, highlighting his quiet but powerful leadership style as a blueprint for others. Ibrahim's courage had sparked an unprecedented wave of continental reflection and strategic reconsideration. In Burkina Faso itself, pride replaced uncertainty. Citizens recognized clearly the significance of Ibrahim's difficult choice. What had initially seemed like stubbornness had proven to be foresight, a calculated sacrifice to protect the nation's future and inspire broader change. Now, Ibrahim stood not merely as a defiant president, but as a beacon of hope. His quiet, unyielding courage had reshaped not just his country's destiny, but the very way Africa viewed itself no longer as a continent defined by dependence, but as a rising force capable of setting its own terms. Weeks later, Ibrahim stood calmly on stage at an influential forum in Nairobi, facing a packed auditorium filled with global media, African leaders, and young professionals. Cameras focused intently, microphones captured every subtle nuance as he stepped up to speak. Without dramatic flair, Ibrahim addressed the room quietly yet clearly, his voice steady and sincere. Silence. He began carefully. Might help us survive today, but only truth will provide the next generation with a reason to keep fighting. His words settled deeply across the hall, resonating far beyond the audience before him. Delegates exchanged knowing glances, inspired by the clarity and quiet strength of his conviction. Ibrahim offered no slogans, no stirring rhetoric, just the powerful simplicity of an undeniable truth. With that calm declaration, Ibrahim solidified his legacy. His words, quiet yet powerful, would echo long after he stepped away from the podium. The next morning, international headlines reflected the profound impact of Ibrahim's words. One prominent global newspaper captured the essence of what had transpired, boldly declaring, when the child at the grown-ups' table forced everyone to rewrite the rules. The article quickly spread, shared widely across continents, read by millions. Ibrahim's quiet courage, once misunderstood as youthful defiance, was now recognized as genuine leadership, a defining moment of political bravery. His voice, though calm and unassuming, had undeniably shifted global perspectives, leaving a lasting impression that went far beyond the summit itself. In the days following Ibrahim's defining speech, there were no grand celebrations, no triumphant speeches, just quiet, profound acknowledgement. The world had witnessed something rare, genuine victory won through simple truth and unwavering courage, without fanfare or dramatic displays. Ibrahim returned to Burkina Faso quietly, yet, everywhere he went, his presence inspired quiet confidence, pride, and newfound dignity. Citizens stood taller, feeling for the first time in generations that their future belonged truly and fully to them. Across Africa, the ripple effect continued silently but powerfully, leaders reflecting on Ibrahim's example, citizens inspired to demand transparency and dignity. Ibrahim's quiet victory had redefined strength not as power or wealth, but as the courage to stand firm when compromise was easier, without applause or slogans. He had changed the rules forever, leaving a legacy built quietly, yet unmistakably, upon truth and honor. Thank you all for watching this video. Please comment and let me know what you think about this story. Please like and subscribe to watch more great content on my channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of personal growth and empowerment.